She needs that today.
So we want to stay along the edges. Yeah.
Where is she?
She's in Michigan. She was walking up and over the Mackinac Bridge yesterday.
Fun.
So one time a year that they let me do that.
So when is it appropriate for me to make my recognition? The moment the gavel bangs?
Let's do it over. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
All set? Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Logan Municipal Council Meeting for September 3rd to order. We have with us this evening for our opening ceremony Nathan Hess, who is the Vice President and Festival Director for Logan Pride. Thanks for being here, Nathan.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for letting us be here. I'll just start with a quick thought, if that's okay. So, poet philosopher in the 13th century, we often refer to as Rumi, abbreviated name, was once quoted as saying, "Out beyond the ideas of right and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there." If anything, humanity does well. It's our ability to other one another. Think of just a couple of examples in our valley, right? Republican, Democrat, member, non-member, gay, straight. To me, the quote is a reminder to remove mental labels in my decision-making so as to more effectively see the humanity behind them. I say that to myself as a volunteer with a very small voice, but also to each of you, council members making decisions for the community. This might not always change our course of action, but at least we can say we've approached our decisions with compassion. So thank you for letting me take a couple of minutes. I'll be brief. My name is Nathan Hess, as mentioned, part of the Logan Pride Foundation board. Also festival director, so I want to talk about both those things today. Just because I tend to move around if I don't write things down, I hope it's not weird, but I wrote down what I wanted to share just to be concise and to respect your time. So let me just read through this, is that okay? So over the next few minutes, I'll share a little bit about Logan Pride Foundation, as well as our annual festival, which is coming up on September 28th from 10 to 5 at Willow Park. For those who aren't familiar with Logan Pride, the foundation itself began in 2017. It was established with a simple but very important mission, which is building a healthy and thriving LGBTQIA+ community by providing safe space and education, resources, and outreach. In order to fulfill this mission, there are several things that the foundation supports. First, our physical location, often referred to as the Pride House, is located off of First North across from the Tabernacle next to St. John's Episcopal. The house and event volunteers hold anywhere from 12 to 15 recurring activities each week. Those activities range from several themed social gatherings such as our trans and non-binary social to specific topics such as Dungeons and Dragons, stitching, and training by local experts on various topics, and many things in between. Preserving this space is first and foremost of importance to the board. However, we are actively engaged in community outreach as a board. Some of the things that this year that we've been engaged in include membership with several local LGBTQIA+ coalitions, engagement in community initiatives involving CHIP, if you're familiar with CHIP, as well as Health Disparities Conference, which I think was down in Bernal. We have presence on Communities That Care, which began work this year. And we also try to make efforts to share the love. We have a small surplus occasionally that we give back to other nonprofits associated with similar work. This year we've given roughly $1,500 to other firms or nonprofits. So why the festival? Most importantly, it's an annual event to celebrate the diversity that we have in this valley, specifically as it relates to the LGBTQIA+ population. Maya Angelou said it best, in diversity there is beauty and there is strength. It's also an important event to spotlight the availability of local resources that can be unique to this community and their needs, as well as we have a lot of local artists and entrepreneurs that also come. The festival itself consists of live music, food and artistic vendors, community resources, and a general spirit of peace and love. Best of all, admission is free, so my call to the community that's here and listening, please join us. You don't have to be LGBTQIA+ to join. There are many allies that come, I myself being one, to just be there in love and peace and to be supportive. So please come. College's quick last thoughts. Another important component of the festival is that Logan Pride Foundation, from its beginnings, existed only upon revenue and fundraising that comes from this festival, predominantly. We love and honor the many vendors and donors that make this possible for us each year. We'll be highlighting many of them through social media. But I would love to commit to public record, mostly the Cash Valley organizations who basically have making this possible this year in 2024. Please consider supporting these organizations in their efforts to also thrive. St. John's Episcopal, Cafe Ibis, Herms Inn, Prodigy Barrel and State, Intermountain Healthcare, Planned Parenthood, Cash Valley Chiropractic, Ornithopter Hosting, The Greenhouse Inc., Coral Mountain Behavioral Health, Come Service, Lucky Slice, and Island Market all have been super responsive to being sponsors this year. We appreciate them. I'd also just mention, related to that, our organization is 100% volunteer. Every dollar that comes in goes back to sourcing the space, events, and resources for our community. Nobody gets payment, not even board members, in terms of so that is predominantly what I just wanted to share. If anybody wants to learn more about the activities, be a part of what we do, either as volunteer or participant, loganpride.org is a great website to check out. We also post all of our stuff on social media, Facebook and Instagram, our primary resources right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan.
Where would join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you coming today and sharing. All right. At this point in time, I will entertain a motion for acceptance of our minutes and approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll move to accept the minutes and approve the agenda for tonight.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes are accepted and the agenda is approved. Just a reminder, we meet every first and third Tuesday at 5:30 here in the council chambers. Our next meeting will be September 17th. It's still like freaking me out that I'm saying September
17th.
17th. Exactly. At this time in our meeting is always the opportunity we provide for people who have questions and comments for the mayor and council. If you would like to come and address something that is otherwise not on our agenda, please feel free to come up to the podium. Please state your name, where you live. We ask that you keep your comments to under 3 minutes, and to also please ensure that they are something that are germane or relevant or applicable to the city's business.
Aloha, Josh Mahler from Logan. Just want to read a quote here. See if you guys can guess it. So, poor man wants to be rich. Rich man wants to be king. And the king, and the king ain't satisfied till he owns everything.
Don't know that quote.
Bruce Springsteen.
Why didn't you sing it for us then?
Yeah. I was wondering, I attended my first Cache County meeting, and I gotta say, that was rough. You guys, this is a lot more chill than those guys. That was a hard 2.5 hours. Thank you.
But there was something that came up in there that I believe is going to directly affect Logan. And this was what was it? It was I can't think of the word for it, but it was an inland port that's being proposed out there.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I don't know if anybody followed the 2019 or the 2019 port down in Salt Lake City. What happened with that, and basically the Hedgemark Control Estate took over with this. With what was it? I think it was Governor Herbert was before Cox. So, yeah, what he did in signing some of these bills, the HB bill, and I can't remember if it was an NB bill, but yeah, I don't believe that Mayor Cox of Hyde Park has been upfront on this when it comes to his constituents. Because if they were to read what happened with that Salt Lake City port and how that port is not going to benefit Hyde Park, in fact, it's going to come down and it's going to cost us too. I mean, seriously cost us. I would, I think maybe reaching out to him, I'm trying to get him some exposure here because I think he needs to be exposed for, the things that he was stating at that meeting, and bringing Logan into it. I mean, I thought what gall he has, in bringing Logan into it. Probably got to take a look at it and, see what you think. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Josh. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the mayor for a report.
Good. Today we have one board appointment that we're requesting that the council members ratify. Richard Guy to the Light and Power Advisory Board. He has some good experience that will be applicable, and I think you've all seen his resume, so would ask for his ratification. He was not able to be here tonight, but that's a motion.
Any questions?
I'll move for recommendation for Richard Guy.
I'll second that.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of appointing Rich Guy to the Light and Power Advisory, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. You're welcome, Mayor Dean. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. We'll now move on to council business. Councilmember Simmons is excused from today's meeting. She is out of town, so we do not have a planning commission report this evening, but we do have some board and committee reports. Would you like to go first, Mike?
Sure, I'd love to. Couple of different boards and events I've been to. So there was a Parks and Rec board meeting, and I was unfortunately unable to attend. There were bad track records with Parks and Rec board, and I had not seen the minutes from that board yet. So no update on that one. BPAC did meet a week ago, and there's a couple updates there. There are a couple of events coming up. There's National Week Without Driving, which is September 30th to October 6th. And this event is a week where you try to not drive at all, as opposed to some other events that just encourage biking or walking or public transit. This one's can you go a whole week without driving? It's actually mostly a challenge to elected officials to see if they can get around their communities without driving.
We know you could do that, but
No, I was actually going to say, I was sitting in the meeting and looking at my calendar schedule for that week and going, that one would be tough.
not that week.
I'm going to try.
Which week is it again?
September 30th to October 6th. The weather will be fantastic, and I will be driving on Tuesday and trying to bike or walk or transit the rest of the week.
So is that the one where they're asking us to sign a pledge?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can get you that pledge if you want to sign
I
it.
already signed it.
Oh. Have you done it before?
No.
Okay.
Not.
But you're willing to try.
Yeah,
The good
so,
news is I'm going to be out of town a couple of days.
You will be.
Somewhere good public transit.
Just kidding.
Yeah. No, I have a shoot that I'd have to take a ladder to on Tuesday, and I don't really want to bike or take the bus.
The ladder.
So I'll be driving that day. And then there's the Bear River Health Department's Bike Week. It's coming up September 9th to the 13th. So BPAC had their Bike Week in May. This one is from Bear River Health Department. And there's more information on their social media and websites. There's giveaways and prizes and different events and things going on with that one too. And then we had a good discussion about trying to connect bike lanes between cities a little bit better, which was kind of a lively and good discussion at BPAC. Other couple interesting things that I did, there was a city employee 5K that I, of course, had to attend and run. And so that was great. And we had a bunch of city employees out for that one. It was 2 weeks ago. It was a nice morning. And then Mayor Danes and I today went to the Utah Clean Cities Anti-Idling Declaration event. Am I getting that title correct?
Yes.
And this is 10 years, is that correct,
That's right.
of being idle-free during the winter in Utah. And there's just two things I actually wanted to share from that event today that the UCARE organization shared in their speech during the event. But one was a recent BYU study that said that the average Utahn loses 2 years of their life due to air pollution in Utah. And they said that in the study it shows that 75% of Utahns will lose 1 year of their life due to air pollution, with 23% of Utahns losing 5 years of their life due to air pollution, which is kind of shocking to me. And then they also, in a University of Utah study, they found that anti-idling campaigns can reduce idle time at schools by up to 38%, which can obviously help those kids when they're walking around and getting between all the cars. So it was just kind of an event to kick off the poor air quality time of the year in the winter here, and kind of share some of that information.
The governor every year declares, well, he was declaring September as anti-idling month. So again, just getting people to think about it in advance of the winter season. So.
I know we used to have a bunch of turn the key, the idle-free signs posted around the city. I think
There's still a bunch of them out
Did
there.
environmental order those, or like
Yeah.
you looked at, are those all around any of the elementary schools? Is that-
They should be. They were at one time. Emily and Paul Rogers, I think, one of our citizens who's interested, has done a lot of liaison on that.
When I was heading past Woodruff Elementary today, I did notice that they still have theirs up. So I haven't checked the other schools, but I do know there are still some around.
Pretty sure there's
So-
one, there's one at
And
Wilson.
Benton Hillcrest needs some since the school.
New school, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And Ellis
And I
has
think
now,
Emily has
since
a
that's
bunch
a
of
newer
things.
Yeah.
school building.
I'll check with Emily.
That's
So-
great.
Yeah. And then just 3 upcoming events that I figured I would let the community know about. There's a Adams neighborhood meeting on Monday, September 9th at 7 p.m. at Adams Park. And then there is a Bridger neighborhood meeting this Saturday, September 7th at 7 p.m. And I didn't get the location on that one. Does anyone know where that one is?
The Bridger one is at Bridger Park,
It's at
and the
Bridger Park.
Adams one is at Adams Park.
Perfect,
And
that makes
thank
it
you
easy.
for mentioning that.
Yeah,
I
so-
neglected to do that.
I'll be at Adams on Monday. Hopefully someone can make the Bridger one this. It's their first neighborhood meeting for Bridger? Is that
Well, for
correct?
a long
For a long time.
So.
So I unfortunately am
And I'm
unable
planning to
Saturday.
do the Bridger one, but I'll be out of town on Monday, so.
I'll swap you. I'll be there. I'm out of town on Saturday. And then there is, to commemorate September 11th, the fire department does their stair climb. I believe we all got that email about it.
I think we all are planning on being there.
We all are planning on being there, and it is open to the public. You're coming.
I'm out of town. Unless they need the paramedics if I were to come.
But it is open to the public, and the fire department climbs all of the stairs at Maverick Stadium because it basically equals the same number of stairs that were in the World Trade Center. So it's 8 p.m. on September 11th. If you'd like to come climb stairs with the fire department, I know I will be there, and there will be paramedics there for people like me who don't train as hard as the fire department. So, but if you'd like to join the fire department and go climb stairs in commemoration and remembrance of 9/11, that is on September 11th at 8 p.m. That's all I have. That was a lot this week. I'm sorry.
It's good to know that you're actually doing your job.
Sometimes I try to.
Sometimes.
Some things to share.
Yeah, this last month I got to attend the Power and Light Board, the Library Board as well. And from the Power and Light Board, there were quite a few updates. The new generation plant, the natural gas, that's already started building that. There were new board members that we ratified, that were welcomed. There was an update on the battery project that we have, and there are some things that I guess are not working as intended, and so they're trying to debug that. The good news is that second dam sediment removal is complete, and that the hydro is working much better than it has for years.
Good.
And let's see what else from there. Well, that is from that board. From the library board, the Friends of the Library reported that they were able to, if I understood correctly, to raise 50,000. Is that what they said?
50
No, for one time. I mean, they donated, I think,
They donated.
15,000 to the new library, and And they've donated in the past.
It was
We named-
15,000, not
We did,
50,000.
Yeah, because
We named the third floor terrace after, in honor of the Friends of the Library.
We spent quite a bit of time reviewing both policies and voting on small changes that need to be adopted. And then also we've been working, some of you may know, on the youth council, kind of re-energizing that initiative. And so we have good news. We've worked with the superintendent for the Logan School District, Frank Schofield, and we've selected, or they've appointed, I guess, maybe that's the better word, volunteer, teacher volunteer. His name is Ryan Nelson. Who'll be helping with this initiative, and currently they're going through Rush Week for the Logan High, and so this program will be for Logan High School, and it will mainly be focused on sophomores and juniors, but we're not necessarily gonna prohibit other kids that really want to do it. And so we're gonna see how it goes, and hopefully this initiative will grow and we'll continue to see it for the next years. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks. So one thing to add from the library board, they are going to put a Christmas train display, and so if you see any requests to help with the funding for that, the Friends of the Logan Library are working on that project, so it should be pretty neat. It's like a bigger gauge vinyl train, not a teeny train, so.
And can I just interject one thing, since Ernesto mentioned the second dam removal project was finished. On Saturday, September 7th, it's kind of a citywide day of service, and the Wilson neighborhood has a big effort plan. Mark's actually coordinating that, and one of the volunteer projects that people can sign up for is helping to clean up the campground and everything at Second Dam after some of the work and so on. So that's just one of the many great projects. I think, can people sign up on Just Serve as well as on
You can
the-
sign up on Just Serve, and we also have a link to sign up.
Yeah, for the
Yeah,
Wilson
for the
neighborhood,
neighborhood.
Mount Logan State Service Project. So if anyone wants to serve on that day, those are great opportunities. The projects, many of them will benefit the city directly there. Some other city parks, Stewart Nature Park,
Logan Canyon Trail.
That's right, Logan
Well,
Canyon.
not Logan Canyon, like
The
Canyon
Logan
Road
River,
Trail, and then
yeah.
Riverside
Right.
Trail.
so, great.
Great, thanks. So just a couple additional things. The local homeless council met today, so we are working on trying to find funding for a feasibility study to look at the issues affecting those that are unhoused, not only here in Cache County, but also in Box Elder and Rich, since we're part of that Tri-County Local Homeless Council. So pulling together people to try to find funding for that. Utah League of Cities and Towns is tomorrow and Thursday, so Mayor Daines and it's called you Dr. Anderson.
That works.
You know my husband. People think that all the time.
That works.
And Mark Anderson and I will be attending that, so hopefully we'll be bringing back some ideas and suggestions for how to help improve life here for our citizens. We are going to be having an economic development meeting this month. I've asked Kirk to pull together just the projects and things that are going on, because we have not had one of those in a little bit of time. So those things are on the docket. So.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
can also interrupt. I also
Yes, you sure may.
think we need to recognize Aaron Smith, that it is his birthday today. And he is spending his birthday evening here at City Council with us. So I tried to get them to sing to you, but we
Nice.
Just sing songs.
Ernesto is a singer, so you want to kick us off with a happy birthday, dear?
Feliz cumple, oh wait.
immediately.
Oh, this is serious. Huh?
Yeah.
La 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 la. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Aaron. Happy birthday to you. It's now part of the official record.
Yeah. All right.
Wonderful. Happy birthday, Aaron.
Commemorated for eternity here. All right. We will now move on to our action items for this evening. We do have 4 public hearings this evening. The first is a public hearing. It is a code amendment related to wireless telecommunication facilities. This is ordinance 24-15. Russ, would you like to walk us through that really briefly before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. And just an update, I think the council received the email from Ms. Nilsson, and the federal law, and Planning Commission also read those emails, and she attended both the Planning Commission meetings for the Willow Park cell tower. But the federal law actually prohibits local land use authorities to make decisions based on health concerns when it comes to cell towers. We can decide design, setback, height, compatibility, zoning, and things like that. But when it comes to health concerns, the federal law is explicit and says, no, the cities do not have that land use authority. You can't factor that in when making a decision. And obviously there's medical information on both sides of the issue, but we just don't get into it at all. But the reality is a lot of folks don't like these right next to their house, and they don't like them right next to a playground. And that became very evident with the Willow Park project. And so that's the reason why I'm here tonight, is because the Planning Commission basically instigated a code amendment that increases the setbacks from cell towers to playgrounds or pavilions or other kind of public gathering areas. And that's essentially what this code does. A couple other things we added in, again, based on Planning Commission input, is we made co-locating and stealth design the first option. So when you come to us with a cell project, we want to see stealth design, we want to see co-locating. We want these as discrete as possible. But we all realize that we rely on cell communication very heavily, and we need these facilities to communicate. The other point is we further encourage cell towers in industrial and commercial services, so we bumped up the height, we decreased the setbacks, because we don't have a lot of concern or feedback when we get a cell tower out on an industrial property. The other thing we did is we increased the setback from a home. It used to be a 150-foot minimum. Now it's proposed at a 200-foot minimum from a house. And then increase the enclosure for the ground equipment so that that's a little more buffered and screened. And that's essentially it. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Any questions for Russ before we open the public hearing?
I think you covered it quite well.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Russ. All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak to ordinance 24-15, please come to the podium. Please state your name, where you live, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
I've got an idea with this cell phone tower. You have people that are, they're worried about their health around them. And, I've read a lot of studies on both sides of the board. I think that with this tower going in, I think to make it so that people feel better, if they don't want to be exposed to these types of things, is to conceal it, but make it so that it is, make it look natural, well, kind of natural, but make it so that people can identify it. So instead of putting like turning it into maybe a pine tree, turn it into a palm tree. That way, it does stick out and people can identify it, but it still kind of coordinates with Mother Nature, so. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Nice to plant a cactus.
I know. I liked the cactus design.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Dr. Gail Yost, I live in Logan. I'm just wondering, is there any kind of access that children could have in climbing or playing on any of these towers, or not because of health, but because of safety? hey, when I was a kid, I climbed up poles. I climbed up trees. Believe it or not, I could do that. But if it looks like a tree of some kind, are they going to take some kind of rope or shoe or something and try to access it? Those are things that need to be considered too. So safety is a little bit higher risk than health at this point, because some of those kids are teenagers who egg each other on. And I used to be one of them too. I think we all did. But I'm really concerned about teens and preteens who will dare one another to climb or scoot up those things. So how do we keep them from doing that?
Thanks, Dr. Yost.
Hi, I'm Matthew Puckwesi, Logan, Utah. In line with that, kids are also going to be playing with balls in the first place, so it's going to be a problem with, in a play space, getting damaged. But in line with that too, I think it's just inherently odd to be multitasking these kinds of things inside of parks. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the saying when it comes to computer programs or software or stuff, where if it's free, then you're the customer, you're the product itself. Like, you are being sold to marketers and advertisers and everything like that. That's a similar principle of what's going on here. Is we're being sold we're selling off our public space for play for the youth, where they don't have to worry about being trained on this is a safe area, this is an unsafe area. And so we're selling off that space to cell towers and stuff and the like. And I just think that that's something to make note of, whether this is a good decision or not to allow this kind of stuff in the first place. So I think it's increasing the distance from parks or something like that, which is a good start, but it's definitely not an exclusion from the parks as opposed to allowing it. Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matthew. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
Can I clarify a couple things briefly?
Yeah, please do.
Russ, is it even possible for us to say that we cannot build a cell tower at all in a public park? What is state and federal code on that?
So if it's deemed essential communication, then the federal act would supersede local, and we rely on that provider to provide those reports that say, we need a cell tower here to provide that essential emergency communication.
So in your opinion, it would be very difficult for us to say that they wouldn't be allowed in parks?
In that case, yes. You typically have some wiggle room, though. It might not have to be in this part of the park, but kind of in this general vicinity.
Which is why we have in the code that, we have setbacks from play areas and playgrounds.
Right. And that's why they are conditionally approved kind of across the city. But again, we really try to incentivize in certain areas.
Sure.
We say, you want to go up to 70 feet? Great. Go into the industrial park zone. And hopefully that extra height will give them that essential coverage that's needed. So we try to incentivize in that way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And related to the screening around the bottom is protective too, to keep people from access to it, correct?
Yes, it's twofold. It's aesthetic, but it's also to keep people out. And then the pole itself, they design them with like the ladder rungs so that they're not installed at a certain height, so you can't just like start climbing. But
Code says a minimum of 6 feet tall, solid wall with additional landscaping required.
yes, that's the proposal.
Which is pretty standard, I'm assuming. Across other municipalities.
Other questions for Russ?
Climb a 6 foot wall.
Well, yeah, but my 5-year-old couldn't.
Discussion, motion?
Nope.
What would you guys like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 24-15.
I'll second.
Is there other discussion?
One last question. We're pushing them further back. Does that, for the ones in the public zone, does that impact the coverage that they provide negatively? Or can they just boost their radio, whatever, broadcasting equipment?
They could, but they also, through that data reporting, they could move it back here farther away from this area, and then the planning commission has the ability to give them some additional height so that they achieve that same coverage, but it's set back in a different area. So there's some flexibility that can apply there.
That's good.
I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
Kind of.
I don't know, okay.
Right, but I do appreciate you making the comment that these are conditionally approved. So they do come before, they are looked at one by one. It's not as if someone says, I'm going to put this up and it's an automatic. It has to be vetted by the planning commission.
Yep, we try to analyze all the impacts and try to mitigate those to the best of our ability.
Yeah. So as opposed to allowed, it's conditionally approved
Yes.
in our code. Okay. So, any other questions? People ready to vote? All right. All those in favor of ordinance 24-15, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, ordinance 24-15 passes. Thank you, Russ.
Thanks.
It's now time for a public hearing on resolution 24-32. This is related to the Hillcrest Neighborhood Plan. Would Aaron Smith, the birthday boy, like to come and present this to us?
Paging Dr. Boyd, Dr. Birthday Boy.
What TV, that has to be from a TV show.
It is.
Which one?
It's from a show called Archer, but
Oh.
I probably shouldn't be a public record now. On FX.
Okay. I've heard of it, I've never seen it, but
Is that right?
go ahead. Jenny, you want to just give us a quick, little quick background?
Right. How much would you like me to cover?
Not a lot. I mean,
Okay.
we've covered this.
Yes.
I know it's worked its way through the Hillcrest neighborhood itself, so anyone who lives in that area has been able to give input, but I do know that you brought this up for a couple very specific reasons to update the plan. If you want to just hit those, that would be great.
Right. So the broad strokes are, this was a chance for the neighborhood to kind of weigh in on the state of the plan, what's been done so far, what is there still to do, and just have a internal discussion with neighbors about what they'd like to see happen in the future. And so I think sort of the culmination of the plan was sort of a new set of recommendations that's not new as in to replace the old ones, but to supplement the existing plan. Those included, for planning and zoning, it included the recommendation to restrict short-term rentals in single-family zones. It also included a recommendation to expand ADUs into the area in Hillcrest where they're currently not allowed, which will be coming up in that ADU short-term rental discussion just down the road. For infrastructure improvements, there was priority around Hillcrest to make sure that all areas are accessible. Also, there were some parks and trails improvements, including improvements to a redesign of a connection from Aspen Drive up to the Shoreline Trail, and then improved park trail network at Lundstrom. Those are really the highlights. I can dive into any specific ones if there were some that you wanted to discuss, but that's sort of the broad strokes.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions about the plan before we open it? Okay.
You covered it well.
Thank you, Aaron. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak to Resolution 24-32, which is a resolution adopting the Hillcrest Neighborhood Plan update, please come to the podium. State your name, where you live. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing nobody, I will bring it back to the council for action. All right. And no one likes the Hillcrest plan, or?
Sorry.
I was just not going to jump at Madam Chair. I move we,
Oh, you just said you
just said,
need
yeah.
it that much.
no, I move we approve resolution 24-32.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
Nope, I was able to go to Hillcrest meetings, and I think everyone up there seemed happy with it
Yeah.
too. So
No.
I have no issues with any of it. Aaron did a good job.
Yeah. No, I think it was nice to see an update. We've seen a lot of new plans. This is the first time since I've been on council where we've updated one, so thank you for bringing that forward.
But we were reminded in the neighborhood council chair checkup the other day that there are a couple of neighborhoods that do not have a plan. And we need to get to those.
Yes,
So we're
absolutely.
mindful of that.
All right, so all those in favor of Resolution 24-32, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 24-32 passes.
Thank you, Council.
You're welcome. We'll see you in a few minutes. All right, our third public hearing is on Resolution 24-33. Surprisingly, we're like 40 minutes into the meeting, we haven't heard from Rich yet, so I guess it's your turn.
All right.
This is a budget adjustment.
3 items to consider. Request to appropriate $47,625 for the fire station 71 roof replacement. $300,000 of grant funds received from the National Forest for replacement of trees. For the Environmental Health Fund, $9,920 for wildland equipment, also granted.
And Fire Station 71 is the one over near the university, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Rich before we open this up to the public comment?
How many trees can you buy with that grant?
So,
I said 5.
More than
that's a big yard.
Yeah,
No, I think
they get quite a few trees probably.
800 to 1,000.
Well, and it will also pay for installation on top of them, so it can be used for that as well, because part of it is our, just
Sure.
the labor on our forestry crew.
1,000 trees would take some time.
Good question.
It's our project for next year, service project.
The only project. Dig 1,000 holes.
All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone who would like to speak to Resolution 24-33, budget adjustments for this year, please come to the podium, state your name, where you live, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I guess everyone's in favor of trees and roofs. I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move for acceptance of Resolution 24-33.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 24-33, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 24-33 is approved. Our final public hearing for this evening is on unspent appropriations from last year carried forward to this year. This is Resolution 24-34. Rich, would you like to walk us through this one?
whole bunch of items, primarily capital related, and then reimbursement grants that have not been exhausted. That's the remainder amount of those. And these did change a little bit, nothing substantial. There was one that was partially omitted, and I'll talk about that in the workshop item. But other than that, very similar to previous years.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich at this point in time? Okay, seeing none from the council, I will open up the public hearing. This is Resolution 24-34. Anyone wishing to speak to it, please come to the podium, state your name and where you live, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Josh Muller from Logan. There's just one thing in here that I've gone wondering what this is, and that's the part of the environmental with the $9,559,884 for environmental capital projects. Where can I find more details on that?
The prior year adopted budget, in the very back, there's a list of capital projects that are listed. But I believe the majority of this is for the compost facility.
Oh, okay.
The remainder of it. But I believe if you look in the back, you'll see all the capital projects that were listed. We can give you a detail of what's remaining, but it's all of those together.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks for asking, Josh. Anybody else care to speak to Resolution 24-34? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move we approve resolution 24-34.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 24-34, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 24-34 is approved. Those carried forwards can be carried forward.
a lot of carrying.
Lots of carry.
Make sure to spend that money next year.
All right, so that ends the portion of our council
Carry
meeting
forward.
with public hearings. We will now move on to our workshop items for the evening. We do have, what do we have, 5 tonight? What are we, 6? 6 tonight. The first is a ordinance 24-16, which is a rezone of 3 properties called the T rezone. Does that stand for something?
It's their names.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was looking at that earlier. I was like,
I was trying to figure it out too.
I heard of boba tea, but I don't think we have to rezone for that. But anyway, so this is a workshop on that. These are properties that are located on 100 East. If you want to walk us through this one, please, Russ.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is from Eric Ashcroft and Tom Hale. They're the property owners at 351 South 100 East. They actually brought a project before the Planning Commission last spring, early spring, and they wanted to rezone the TC1. But the Planning Commission didn't like the idea. They pulled back and thought about it, and then they came forward again just last month for a commercial rezone application. So this part of the block is currently zoned NR6, so the block is essentially cut in half. NR6 is all the east side of the block, and then the west side of the block is commercial with the exception of the Villa 364 project, and we'll hear that in just a minute, so I'll explain that later. The 2 homes were built in the early 1900s, and then the third property is vacant. It's kind of a flag lot that circles around the back. The proposed zoning is commercial, and commercial does follow the FLUP designation. The future land use map considers the entire block to be commercial at some point in time as Logan continues to grow. We actually had these 3 blocks zoned commercial for a couple of years, and then as we went through some neighborhood meetings, we downzoned those back to NR6.
Do you remember when that was?
Say how long ago?
About 3 to 4 years ago. I'm bad.
2012, 2013.
10
Like
years
about
ago.
10 years ago.
10 or 11 years ago.
I was about to say I'm bad with
Memory
time.
slipping.
Do you have
Bad with time for
teenagers?
6 years.
Felt like 3 years ago. Since then, though, we've had the River Woods, the River Walk project has expanded to 400 South. And you can see it here in this image. There's a new office building on the corner of 4th South and 1st East. And then it's outside of the image, but the L59 project and the Thornley Dentist Plaza is on 2nd South. So the area is transitioning and growing. The actual applicant does not have a project in mind. This is simply a rezone. They would come back later for design review or conditional use when a project is proposed. The Planning Commission debated this quite extensively, and ultimately they were a split vote. They were 5-2. 2 of the commissioners felt like the timing was the issue. I think the Planning Commission understands that eventually this block should be redeveloped as commercial. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the Planning Commission didn't like, the 2 no votes did not like the middle of the block being the first commercial rezone. They felt like if this were the lower corner or the upper corner, that it made more sense from a sequence standpoint.
Doesn't the city own the property to the north?
The city owns
Those 3 properties,
three properties.
right?
several of the northern
Not the
properties
right
there,
there.
not all of them.
3.
Yeah, there's one house in between. but
This one is
there's-
private, this one's private, but these 4, I believe, are city. And then there's a home here that's private, and then the subject property. And then these homes here are all occupied and owned privately.
And are they all occupied, because I know sometimes with a rezone that someone previously was operating a commercial business out of a home, that it would still, they could continue to do so, but all of those homes on 400 South are
Occupied as
occupied
residences.
as residences, not as businesses?
Yes, they are residential, they have not been converted to business
Okay.
use. And so 5-2 was the planning commission vote, and those are the reasons why they voted that way. We did have quite a few folks from the public show up and voice either concern or curiosity. One of the comments was just about property values. And then it goes back to timing. Again, I think a lot of folks understand that eventually this area will become commercial. So, having said that, I am happy to answer any questions. I have some better pictures, and then this shows the two homes on the block.
I'll say, since Jeannie isn't here, I'll ask her question. Is there any historic value to the properties?
So they are not inside the local historic district. They could qualify. They are more than 50 years old, obviously. I don't know as far as their integrity or their grading would be.
So given the fact that we're looking at doing a general plan update, how does the timing of working within what's designated as the fluff now and what potentially could come out of the general plan, would it be consistent to still, I mean, not that we don't want to do anything until the new general plan's in place, but the likelihood that this might be reevaluated into the general plan, how would you answer that question?
That is a great question.
I always have good questions.
And the fluff will certainly be reevaluated extensively. That process could be 18 to 36 months, kind of depending on the consultant and the timeline selected there. Yeah, I don't know.
And where are we at with that right now? You guys are interviewing people, is that correct, for the general plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just as a person with obviously more than 10 years of experience here in the city, because you were here when this was downzoned, what would be kind of your instinct as to where this might fall out in a revision of the general plan? Would it be commercial is probably where it would likely stay?
I'm really confident that it won't stay NR6 in a new fluff addition, just because of that road category and the traffic amounts there. I don't see new single-family homes being built there in the future.
What about MR?
Now, it could be some form of MR, mixed use might work here. I don't know, I can't answer that, but I am confident that it won't be NR6.
Do you have concerns with the middle of the block going into commercial before a corner?
Without a clock there? No one got that.
Middle of the block.
Middle of the block. Oh my gosh. Sleep out.
I got it.
Sorry.
I got it now. I was waiting for Russ's answer.
It's a jewelry store, no
A
problem.
jewelry store could be there.
Yeah, no problem. It'll depend on the type of development and the use. I think you could do something mid-block, to initiate it. Ideally, though, it might be combined with more properties, either to the north or south, and then you can get a larger, typically when you have a bigger site, you can do a better layout, better design. This sits at just under, not even 1 acre, it's 0.92 acres, so it's not a large site.
So you don't have big concerns with a mid-block rezone first? So you got off on a tangent there.
Well, I said it depends on the actual land use and project, but I think our code
Could work.
and the safeguards in the code can figure that out from a design standpoint and make something work.
Because as long as the neighboring there's homes there, they still have to abide by design
Yeah.
criteria, even if they're commercial, because it's NR6 next to it. correct?
Yeah, and that's another reason why it makes sense to combine this with additional, because we have extra setbacks, extra buffers when you build next to NR6. So it's more difficult to utilize your property when you're next to NR6.
And as of right now, the city has no definitive plans for the parcels that they own.
Not that I'm aware of.
Mayor Daines?
No, I mean, they were purchased with affordable housing funds, so if we don't use them for that purpose, that funding would sort of have to be paid back, but we do not have anything on the horizon that we're even discussing at this point.
But right now, so based on how they were purchased, affordable housing would be the usage if we did do
Depending
something
on what
with
they
it right
want
now.
to do, we could have some nice affordable housing there.
And you said there were some comments from the neighborhood?
Yeah. Mainly they don't like change. That's what it boils down to.
So most of them were opposed to
Yeah.
that.
And I will say this corridor is difficult because a lot of our long-range plan says the east side of this road needs to stay single-family. And that's another reason why we have a code that gives those extra buffers and setbacks. But when you have, commercial on one side of the street, single-family on the other side of the street, it's a little bit difficult to balance that.
So do those buildings across the street governs too? What's built in?
It would, correct.
What's across the street?
It's either side to side or across the street.
Okay.
And if you notice on the L59, those new townhomes that are just up the block, they have a larger front yard because of the houses across the street.
Or set back further. That street is getting busier.
So refresh where would I find what's allowed in the commercial zone in our code?
It's in the table. Are you talking like business
Yeah, what
type or
types?
like
Yeah.
building bulk?
Business types.
It's in our land use table. It's
We
a
don't have
long
it
list.
memorized?
It's a long list. That's a big list.
But there's no restrictions like
could
for
put a
gas stations, et cetera, if like that would
You
be,
could build a gas station in commercial,
okay?
retail, restaurant, office.
Can't have an ATV line.
Not vehicles, ATV sales are not,
And you could have
but like,
commercial. You could have commercial on the main floor and a lot of residential on top too.
you can have a car wash and a credit union, so.
Yes.
I don't know.
You know what you can expect.
Like, we don't have
Do we have a drink drive-through?
Do you follow social media by any chance?
No, but I'm here permitting those projects all the time.
Sorry.
Oh, there is a question on 100 East, right? Yeah.
Affordable housing.
What was that? Elizabeth?
There's not a car wash.
There isn't a car wash on 100 East, so
No,
somebody maybe.
it's not one within 3. Not one within 3 blocks.
All we need.
No, I mean, I appreciate the concerns that people in the neighborhood have for,
Yeah.
if that's your home and you live there, I have great appreciation for how hard this feels. Like to see your neighborhood changing and to hear people saying that your neighborhood is going
be
to
commercial.
change and make sense to change. It's got to be really, really difficult. This is one of the hard things about being on planning commission and one of the hard things about being on city council is balancing
Yeah.
individual needs with the cities.
You look at the map and the fluff and you're like, oh, it can make sense, but you also have to look at what it feels like to live across the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Or next door, or your backyard.
And we're not at liberty to rezone and say like, in this commercial zone, these businesses are only conditionally approved.
No.
Come on.
Or we could change the zoning code.
The gas station comment, like, what's the likelihood of a gas station going right there when there's one right next to it?
Well, there's two.
Two right next to it.
Yeah, right across the street.
In case you don't want Maverick on the other side, you got one on the other side.
I know,
I would say
but
highly
this is-
unlikely, yeah.
This is always my heartburn when we rezone something,
What's
is
the
that
likelihood of
you
one
don't have any
outside of the
control
intersection?
over, if it fits the code, it fits the code.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the code.
it's, we can say it wouldn't make any sense to put a gas station there, but that doesn't mean someone couldn't try. Okay. Any other questions for Russ on ordinance 2416? So we have, they don't have a project. Did they express an idea that they had a project? They just didn't want to spend money to develop it before it was rezoned?
The latter. I do not think they have a project in mind at this point.
Not even like an inkling?
Nor am I
Or
sure
they have
they
a
will be the ones that propose the project. I wouldn't be surprised if another developer purchases it and then proposes a project.
Okay. Anything else for us on this one? Okay.
Nope.
We will see you in 2 weeks when this will be a public hearing.
Well,
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
you'll see me in about 2
Hi,
seconds.
Russ is going to stay right there.
We're
for
going to
next.
now workshop the down zone of Bill 364, which is right behind this project. This is ordinance 24-17, and you and I have talked about this in the past.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This one should be pretty straightforward. So the Villa 364 project.
Sorry. I keep saying, I need to call you Madam Chair, and I'm like, don't, and now you just did it, so I'm just wondering.
We're starting a trend,
Starting a trend.
Madam Chair.
So this one should be pretty straightforward. This project needed TC1 zoning to convert from a hotel to housing. And that was done 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 months ago. It was done in the past. We were waiting until they got all their building permits secured so that they were properly grandfathered and vested in. And they have done that now. They are working on their fire suppression to final out that building permit and get them legally established. But at this point, it's safe to downzone them back to commercial, get the rest of the block in line here. And the reason for the downzone isn't for Villa 364, it's for potential future property. So if that were sold and redeveloped, we wouldn't want a TC1 project there. You know, that can be up to 8 stories, very small setbacks. It just wouldn't be appropriate for this block along this stretch of Main Street. Downtown, yes, we love tall buildings and tight spaces, but not on 3rd and 4th South Main Street. So that's the reason for the proposal. This was initiated by staff, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And that owners of BL 364 are on board with the downtown.
Yep, they knew this was coming. We did not have any public comments at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission voted 7-0 in favor of downzoning this.
Just makes sense.
So just a question, do you think that because that was TC1, is that what prompted the previous project we talked about to think about going TC1 and that
Yes.
initial possibility? Okay.
So correct.
Okay.
Even though I advised them not to pursue that, they did.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Russ on this one?
Was it commercial before it was TC1?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So
Is it common to upzone and then downzone?
this
No,
was-
that was a very unique
It's a
situation.
really unique project because it was, since it was a hotel, they were not allowed to have, they had to have commercial on the main floor. And so since it was converted to affordable housing, which our community really needs, it was causing them to have to do those basically as rental, short-term overnight rentals versus being allowed to give people leases for them.
For
So
long term, that makes
it
sense.
was the one
Makes
time where
sense.
I felt like spot zoning made sense
It made a lot of sense.
to help our community at
That makes
large.
sense.
with affordable
For that
housing.
We did it 2
Building.
years ago. It was 22.
Not 10.
Yeah, it wasn't 10.
Did you look it up?
No, it's in there. It's right in
Oh,
there.
we're sure that-
Yeah, it's like, yeah, if you
So does that help answer that question as to why?
if you read the packet, it's amazing how many things you can find in there. Like how tall the enclosure is around the cell towers.
You could refer to me as Madam Chair.
No, I remember when we changed that
No, I-
to TC1, and it made sense then, and it makes sense now. So.
Correct. All right, any other questions for Russ? Or can we excuse him? Even though it's not
Maybe
his
he comes back
birthday,
later.
even though it's not his birthday, he gets to go home. All right, thanks, Russ, appreciate it.
Thanks, Russ.
Our next workshop is ordinance 24-18. This is a code amendment related to ADUs.
I'm so
They
excited.
brought the big guns in for this one.
Hi, Madam Chair, how are you?
Thanks for asking, I appreciate it.
It's officially a thing, yeah.
Okay.
It's all right. I can put up with you guys.
So this is ordinance 2418, code amendments for dealing with home occupations, accessory dwelling units, and short-term rentals. So home occupations, we did both chapters, 1736, 1737, because it comes in like a packet in our code, so it was just easier to do it all at one time. But basically, home occupations are some type of commercial activity that you do in your house. So when we look at them, the use, the scale, and the context are important. So think about a home office, somebody has in their basement, a back bedroom, you don't even know it's there, versus somebody who wants to set up a transmission shop in their garage. So it's all about use, scale, and context when we look at those. We regulate those through the development code, through the municipal code. There's standards of both, and Aaron's going to talk to you tonight about another proposed change to the muni code. But the purpose of these regulations are to protect the residential character, allow for some limited commercial activity, but then also mitigating potential impacts. So the updates that we proposed, the Planning Commission agreed with, and passed on to you is we want to allow home occupations with customer traffic in multifamily structures. So somebody who lives in an apartment might want to do do hair, something like that. They need to get permission, obviously, the owner, but that's not been allowed up to this point. Increase the amount of customer traffic from 20 to 30 people per week before a CUP kicks in. Clarify the parking standards, require on-site parking for home occupations. We know they couldn't park in the street, but still require that all their employees park off-street. And then prohibit any kind of truck, vehicle, equipment, materials, parking, storage, and residential lots. So that's when you get a person that has a roofing business or a landscaping business, their employees show up, they all congregate there, and then they take off in company vehicles. We're trying to get that out of residential areas.
So how does
That's happening.
like daycare centers fall into this?
They're not regulated as a home occupation. They're
Okay,
really different.
thank you.
So then we jump to accessory dwelling units, and this is just a secondary housing unit on a residential property. So it's internal, external, any kind of addition, basement conversion. You could do a detached freestanding building, second floor, and a detached garage. There are a lot of these in Logan. We all know them as grandfathered units, but there are a lot of accessory dwelling units that have gone down a different path. So our current program, we only allow internal ADUs now. That's currently what we do permit. They're not permitted in the zone around Utah State. You can see on that map, it runs from 2nd East all the way up to 16th East, and then on 14th North down to the river. And that was our first reaction to, we have to do ADUs in the city. We were concerned about the saturation around the university. Got to be owner-occupied detached structure, minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. You can't change the appearance of the house. Got to have one additional parking stall. And we prohibited short-term rentals in licensed ADUs. And then since we started this in 2021, we've had 5 that we've issued. So some of the changes that we proposed, the Planning Commission, permit them citywide, so any zone, do an ADU, to remove that exclusionary area around USU, so basically get rid of the map, and then allow for all types of ADUs, both internal and external. And then we did propose some parking changes. You still have to do one stall for an ADU, but allow you to put it in the driveway if you've got enough physical space and you can't put it elsewhere on the property. And the idea is to get away from those little weird wonky driveway or parking areas on the side of the house. And then we also changed the language to allow for a short-term rental in a permitted ADU. If in fact you go through the process to establish the ADU, then at some point you could do the same process to establish a short-term rental, meet all the criteria, of course. And then modified the 6,000 square foot lot. Minimum size, just it's applicable to an external ADU only.
So that was one of my questions was why that allowing STRs and permitted ADUs. If part of the point of doing ADUs was to increase housing and short-term rentals don't, what's the thought process behind changing that part of this?
Planning Commission felt like that if you establish an ADU and you change your mind in 2 years,
this just gives you the ability to do something different. I mean, there's no logical reason why you would or wouldn't, or why you prohibit that in an ADU. Create standards for external ADUs. The idea is that they're subordinate or subservient to that primary dwelling. So they've got to go either in the side or the rear, behind the front plane of the house. They've got the scale and size is limited to no more than 50% of the footprint of the house, and not to exceed 1,000 square feet. You've also no more than 50% of your backyard covered with the house. The height's got to be the same as the primary dwelling or shorter, 20 feet max. Meet the underlying setbacks, and then again, the minimum lot size only applies to the external ADUs.
So that 50% coverage, it's 50% of the whole lot, including the
everything on the side and the rear of the house.
So 50% of lot after you factor out the front yard.
If the house is already taking up 50% of their yard, there's not room for an external ADU?
No, so
And that was when I was reading through this, I was trying to understand that piece of it. So it's 50% of the remaining side yard and backyard after the main house?
So it's if you look at this middle picture right here with this little detached ADU in the back, so it's what land area is behind the house, so how much physical space is back there. And if it's a small lot, it might be 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet, or if it's a big lot, it might be 15,000 square feet. You can't cover more than 50% of that available land area back there.
Okay, so the available land.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also ask about the 6,000 square foot minimum lot sizes there? It seems slightly redundant to me if we're already limiting how much lot coverage we can have and we already have setbacks. I mean, obviously there's very few use cases where you're going to fit a external ADU on a sub 6,000 square foot lot.
Right.
But it also feels like if someone had a lot where they could fit it and it met all the setbacks and didn't cover 50%.
And you're limited by size too as well.
Right. It just felt like, I felt like that 6,000 was almost unnecessary since we're already limiting total coverage and setbacks for the 8 people in Logan who it might apply to. I don't know if that 6,000 is necessary. I don't know if is that just me coming out of left field, but.
Yeah, probably, but I don't think we disagree on that. I think you get there mathematically by limiting the size of it, limiting your lot coverage, and limiting your setbacks. So you're already squeezing down how much land area you can to do an external ADU.
I guess I'm just asking why that's also in there then.
Planning Commission recommended to keep it in there.
And they didn't have a reason?
It was, well, originally it applied to all ADUs, which was internal.
Sure.
Internal, and so then they just said, no, apply it to external ADUs. But they didn't go through the same exercise of kind of talking it through about, well, you're already reducing it by these other factors, these variables, so they didn't say, well, this seems redundant, but I don't think I disagree with that.
I'd say it feels really redundant to me, but.
Well, I don't know that I agree with you, but that's all right.
That's okay, you can disagree. Just can I ask why?
So how many lots do we have in the city that are
0.13
smaller than
acres.
6,000 square feet? Not too many.
I don't know, I can guess.
I mean, that is 0.13, 0.14, right? Acres.
As far as square footage?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Small.
get a calculator, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have many lots smaller than that.
Well, the new ones are, a lot of the ones are
1.37.
small, so they're 6,000, that's the minimum size in R6, so you're seeing more and more. If you look at the existing blocks in the older part of town, those lots might be 70 feet wide, but they go back, 330 feet, so they're fairly good size.
So I think from a perspective of code, this is why I disagree with you. One of the recommendations that's been coming down from the state is that we create some more of those like micro lots, I don't know what they call them, like the tiny home lots. So then the 6,000 square feet, we might have more lots that are not.
I would just think that if you had a smaller than 6,000 square foot lot and you wanted to add an ADU, and it had to be less than 50% of the rear yard or side yard, and you had to meet standard setbacks, and you have to make it actually make sense, you're going to build like a 90 square foot ADU that's going to rent out for you.
We can have.
I don't know. I just feel like
It could be a tiny home. Like
it would be a tiny
that.
home.
You could put a tiny home in.
Madam Chair, we can
Yes.
have Russ draw some pretty pictures for next time, I can just throw them up.
That would be awesome.
That'd be great.
That's pretty picture.
more work for us.
All right.
I don't disagree that there can't be good options.
Yeah.
I just, if we're trying to expand affordable housing, tiny
just to
homes might
confirm-
make sense on some small lots in some areas.
If an SDR is allowed in formerly an ADU, then they still have to meet the requirements for
the short-term rental?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. This just takes away that exclusion of, you've done the process to get an ADU, you've gone through and renovated your basement, or you've built one in the back, whatever, but you've changed your plans, and now you want to see if I qualify for short-term rental. Okay, on to the next one, short-term rentals. This is a little more heated, I guess, for Planning Commission. So what we originally proposed to Planning Commission was eliminate short-term rentals in all single-family zones, increase the separation in multifamily zones from 500 to 1,000 feet, and that's the separation between licensed or permitted short-term rentals. Decrease the total number of short-term rentals in all residential zones from 3 per 1,000 of population to 1 per 1,000 of population. Current population is 55,000, give or take 1,000, so, and we've got 21 that are licensed, 7 in the process with 28, so we're already halfway there of legally permitted and licensed short-term rentals. We propose to limit the occupancy load to 8 people maximum, regardless of the size of the structure. Change the parking to kind of mirror what we did in ADUs, basically use your driveway instead of building additional stalls. And then we added a special category of purpose-built communities, and I'll talk about that in just a sec. So the discussion kind of centered around housing issues. You know, you have a tight housing market, supply and demand. Every time you permit a short-term rental, you're taking out one dwelling unit for a long-term family. People are saying, well, these drive up home prices. There's really no data to support that. And then when you look at numerically, if we've gone through, we've done 37 applications reviewed out of 18,000 plus dwelling units, it's hard to say there's a significant housing impact when the number is so small. That there's not an impact in certain locations in certain parts of the city, but citywide, it's probably not a housing issue per se. The bigger issue is the neighborhood issue. It's the argument that these things are commercial use, they destroy the neighborhood character. It comes down to an issue of rights, your right to make money versus my right to live there, my quiet enjoyment of my property. You've got nuisances, noise, people, parking, you get a lot of strangers wandering around. And then the perception that you lose your property value, but again, there's no data to support that. And really, it's about equity and variable burden impact. That's really what it comes down to. Talked about the benefits of short-term rentals. There's tourism, economic benefits. Most of us here have stayed in an Airbnb somewhere. It's hard to imagine one next door to where you live, but we go somewhere to stay in an Airbnb because they have certain benefits. They're an alternative to traditional lodging, and they bring some diversity to the neighborhood. More discussion. At first, they started. The Planning Commission started trying to change our existing system, and we said, wait a sec, our existing system, our permitting system is sound. It does what it's supposed to do. It permits short-term rentals, it mitigates for concerns. Again, it's tied to both the Land Development Code and the Municipal Code. We require you to do certain things. You got to notice your neighbors when you get a permit or a license. We require you to give out your information so that they know who to contact. So I think what we have in place is fairly sound, and that's really not what the big issue is. We have very few complaints about licensed short-term rentals. We do get a couple complaints on the illegal ones, but not a lot.
So do you know what most of those complaints were on the short-term rentals? Were they noise complaints or people park in a van and like a?
Yeah, some will be directed to PD, but again, we don't get very many.
Very many?
No.
Okay.
The discussion that came out is that people don't know who to call, what they do if they see a house next door that's got 30 pairs of shoes on the front step. Well, you can file a complaint on the website. You can contact that proprietor of that short-term rental because they give you their information. You can call an non-emergency number. You can get hold of us on Monday and we'll follow up with them. But one of the parts about enforcement is we can't use this. The state has prohibited us on using like the listing platforms as a basis for enforcement. So I can't go look at Airbnb and start going through and say, ooh, there's 5 of them. Let's have Aaron go out and take a look at it. We can get a complaint and then say, okay, that's our basis. But again, if people are running these right, we're not going to hear about it. The issue is when somebody wants a license, then people are aware of it. Then they come out to the board and say, I don't like this. So. The other discussion topic was us enforcing private HOA and CCRs. This came up a little bit last year, and it's really not our responsibility as a city to enforce your private covenants. That's up to you to enforce your own private covenants. But what we will do is update our application to inform people to talk to HOA and to make sure that they check their CCNRs, that they've gone through that process.
And so I know that there's this discussion about allowing these in multifamily as well. That would also hold true if someone had a rental lease then, correct? Like if,
I didn't hear the first part, sorry.
if they were recommending that we allow short-term rentals in multifamily, which, so the same thing would hold true if I'm renting a unit in an apartment and I decide I'm in a short-term rental. It's not the city's burden, that would be the landlord's burden to say, no, you're not allowed to rent out your unit as a short-term rental.
That's correct. You're breaking your lease. It's not in there.
Okay.
So where we landed, as far as what you have in front of you, is that we took out that prohibition of single-family zones. We did leave in the 1,000-foot separation in those single-family zones. We put back in the old separation in multifamily zones to 500 feet. We left the reduced total numbers from 3 per 1,000 to 1 per 1,000. Changed the occupancy language back to the current language, so 2 people per bedroom plus 2. Kept the parking changes, and then we added purpose-built communities, which basically, you look at a project like Willow Lakes that's being built as kind of a destination type of area. It's got water skiing, mosquitoes. So people buy that. Mosquitoes. They want to go.
They do have that.
Water skiing, mosquitoes.
Hand in hand.
Features.
But you know what you're buying and building into, right? So the idea was let's recognize these types of communities, but do it through the PDO plan development process where it's more negotiable. And then you can also look at the standards that we have in place and weigh those other standards, like total numbers, separation, things like that. And this is common in like St. George. There's some community, home resort communities down there that have done this. And then the final thing is with Planning Commission, it's really not about the code or housing. It's really about the neighbor compatibility issue. And I think you all hear this when we have a license in front of us to look at, and the neighbor is like, wait a second, who allowed this to happen? And the Planning Commission said, well, it's really not about that issue. It's about, we're looking at the operational issues and the functional issues. If you have that issue, go talk to your council. And so I think you've got some of those those comments and feedback. And then it's really about, answering and asking who benefits. So we all benefit from Airbnb, but yet you benefit financially, but do I have to bear the burden of your financial gain? So it's a tough one. I mean, it's a hard issue to come to your hand around. So, okay, questions?
I have a question, and I don't know if it's related to this, but so for our non-approved ADUs or short-term rentals that we have, if the unit is occupied by somebody and it's an illegal short-term rental, what's the city's ability to do anything? Like if I'm renting on Airbnb and neighbor complains and it's not a legally licensed short-term rental, like the city, I'm just curious as to what enforcement looks like on that, because I know Aaron works really hard, and I'm just curious as to what.
It's a hard one to follow up on, so it falls back on us to prove that you're actually violating the law. So the fact that your neighbor complains about you doesn't really mean it's a violation. It's,
right.
Now we have to go out and prove it. And so then we put it into our workload and try to follow up, monitor, to make sure that we know what's going on or not going on that property. And so you can look at any given day, you see a car with a different license plate, and then go back next week, it's the same thing, a different car with a different plate, and we can kind of track it that way. But it's just like any other type of enforcement with occupancy. The burden's on us, on the public, to go after folks and to actually prove that there is a violation.
Yeah.
So.
And do we have any enforcement officers that are available in the evenings and weekends, which is when it's most likely that a short-term rental would be occupied?
Yeah, we can alter schedules if we need to. We've done that for occupancy. We've done, when school starts, our people will go out at night or on the weekend and look, especially when winter parking hits, we'll do that too, to do some parking sweeps. So we can if we need to.
Can enforcement rely on neighboring citizens to help with that enforcement issue, or is that, if a neighbor submits 12 photos as part of their complaint, is that valid information for the enforcement, or is that?
Yeah, that helps us establish whether there's a pattern, whether there's an issue there or not. The challenging thing about enforcement is we get people that call us about the house down the street that's over occupied, but it's 4 boys who don't go to church and they hang out on the porch drinking beer. The house, the other way, you got 6 girls in there, they all go to church, and they're lovely ladies. We never get called up them. So it's a real big challenge. And again, the proof is on us to prove that there's a violation there. And you still have rights as a landowner that we can't go pound down the door and go, hey, we're here to see who's living here, how many beds you have, how many pairs of shoes. So it's one of those things that are really challenging to follow up on, but we do.
So why the 1,000, 1 per thousand?
Yeah, can you go back one
instead of 3 per
page?
thousand?
Yeah,
Like, I'm just curious about that, because,
Where did the 3 come from, and where did the 1 come from?
my struggle with that is if we limit it, then aren't we just maybe forcing more people to go under the radar versus keeping it at a higher available number? Because, I mean, I know that we're not supposed to look at Airbnb and VRBO listings, but
You can.
I can, and
Yeah.
we're probably close to 1 per thousand when you look at the number of listings we have out there. So my concern with keeping it at that 1 per thousand is that people who if we want to encourage people to do the right thing,
That's the question.
register
It's
their
like,
short-term
would you rather
rental.
have more illegal ones, or would you rather make
Right.
it possible for them
For them to
actually?
Because, I
Be
mean,
legal, so you
I
have
can
contact
see us
numbers
hitting
and
that
contact
limit.
numbers.
If everybody who is not doing this properly did, I'm just concerned we would hit and have to kind of reevaluate.
I'd say
all
we
of
have
it.
more illegal than we have legal right now, just off the top of my head, but.
Yeah, so the 3 per thousand is the existing code language.
Right.
The way to get at what's the uppermost limit, what's the uppermost number that we're willing to tolerate. So 3 per times 50, 152 when we wrote this, so 150 of these units.
Right.
But we backed away from that, thinking that was probably too many in the city, because they tend to congregate in the residential areas.
Yeah.
You also have the competing standard of the separation. We changed the standard on how you measure it, so it's measured as a crow flies. Before it was kind of a pedestrian route to get from 1 to 2, but now it's, you plot on a map, draw a circle around it, so that's an exclusion zone. So really, it's in your interest to get licensed, and it's the same as everything else. You can choose to do it legally or illegally, and eventually we'll catch you, and we'll find you, and write you a ticket, and bring you into compliance. By then, you may have lost your ability to get a license to do it legally.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was just thinking with the expanding the zone, expanding the limitation on how many can be in a block. I'm struggling a little bit with why we're dropping to 1, if we're not completely banning.
Yeah, the other thing you gotta look at is, say we do have 150 total, illegal and legal, but we turn those into homes that are for sale. How many homes does that add to our inventory that is sorely depleted? Got 150 homes to inventory, all of a sudden prices come down.
Which goes back to just prohibiting them. Yeah.
So it's like, do you want to make an impact on housing, or are you gonna let people continue to make more money on their rentals?
That's the hard question.
Yeah, that's a really hard question. Yeah, it's like, I'm not saying we should do either one. But it's like 150 homes makes a huge impact on our market.
So in the packet, which I did read, you had that graphic about the number of homes and percentage of occupancy and things like that. Can you guys pop that up next week when we do the public hearing, or do you have that in your packet today? I just thought that was kind of an interesting schematic to look at and see the number of homes.
Yeah, I don't have it. I can do it next time.
Okay, I think that would be helpful to have for us to look at next week when we do the public hearing.
You're looking for this one.
This is what you're talking about.
That one.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Interesting way to look at the numbers.
One of the pros and cons of your first bullet point there about limiting short-term rentals within all single-family residential zones.
Well, again, that's what we originally proposed.
I say, because that was your original proposal.
And
Can you explain why, and then maybe some of planning commission's reasons to change it?
We were trying to read the tea leaves of this group, trying to figure out which way to go. No, I think it was based on the feedback that we had gotten during the the processing of short-term rental permits and CUPs. Sometimes we had nobody show up because people just didn't seem to care. But other times we had a lot of folks that showed up that were concerned about, why is this going in my neighborhood? Why is this, I buy a house, I want the enjoyment of my house and my property, my rights, yet you're putting a short-term rental in next door, why? And so, that's not an illegitimate argument or, feeling to have, and so we thought, well, let's throw that out there and see what sticks. Planning Commission didn't agree with that. They felt like, no, that was too draconian and didn't like it. So, and they were unanimous, I think it was unanimous, I have to look at what the minutes said. And coming back with, allow them in the short term, in the single family, but would have enhanced distance requirements.
Is there a precedent for your recommendation to eliminate them within single-family zones in other cities, other states? And maybe I'll look at Mo, is that?
It's all based on whatever.
Is that even legal?
It's based on individual cities.
Yeah, but you can't carve out zones like you could with the ADUs.
Oh, you can't carve out zones, but you can
couldn't
carve.
say Adams neighborhood can't have them, but
Wilson gets all
Wilson
of
gets to, like, right, correct? We can't carve
Yeah,
out.
put them in a
them. You can eliminate
Yes.
zones, but not geographic
Not
areas.
geographic areas.
Okay. That makes more sense to me.
So we have some in our commercial zone, downtown, town center
Sure.
zone, there's a few there, they make sense because people can walk to businesses and stuff. But again, the attraction of short-term rental is you can put in your whole family into a, one unit. And or you can have two families or whatever else, whereas an hotel room needs to be.
I never want to stay with my home.
So can we go back to the ADUs?
Before we go back to ADUs, can I ask like 3 more questions? Sorry, Madam Chair.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
The 1,000 foot to 500 foot, is there a reason to me the 1,000 foot seems very logical when I look at maps, and decreasing that to 500 feet in multifamily. What was the reasoning there on that decrease? Because you originally proposed 1,000 across the board as well, correct?
Right. Yeah, so the current standard is 500 feet.
Right,
That's the
but
current
it's walking, not as crow flies.
Right. Again, it just gets back to the total saturation of short-term rentals citywide. So if you've got an enhanced distance between them, then you're not going to get as many, obviously. And we use that logic that came from, I think, Henderson, Nevada. They did that. They applied the same kind of standard to their units and said you've got to be, no closer than like 600 feet or whatever the number is. That's where we kind of came with the first idea.
So in the townhome development,
You're okay with? I feel like it's more of an impact when you're in a townhome next to someone, though.
so having so you would be more advocating 1,000 in a town area versus the 500 because.
I just feel like there's probably a greater impact in a townhome if your next door neighbor is a short-term rental than there is in a single-family home. I would assume.
Well,
because you're closer to those people who are short-term rentaling.
But the number of them is probably because it's, I don't know, but the number would be the same as in the.
The issue though, in say a townhome development is it gets down to how you're assigned parking and whether or not you have the ability to utilize parking for guests.
I hate parking.
I know, parking the same. This is a map that shows kind of the saturation currently. The little red dots are all licensed short-term rental.
I want to.
Just gives you an idea of where they're at citywide.
This is the short.
Huge clump
Yeah, what is
there.
That's just one property, it's just a big piece of
Oh, it's just a big property.
That was our very first license that came through.
Interesting.
So I go back to ADUs if you want.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Realtor.com says we have approximately 300 homes for sale right now in Logan.
They're doing this.
150 is a 50% increase.
If people would.
Is that significant enough to make an impact on pricing?
I don't know.
I'm going to go back to short-term rentals on one more question.
Oh
Can we
my
do that?
gosh. Okay,
Sorry, Madam
let's
Chair.
finish up with short-term rental.
I know, before we
No,
change
sure,
gears.
Let's do that.
You originally recommended 8 maximum occupancy, and Planning Commission,
Yep.
right, for short-term rental. Planning Commission recommended going back to 2 plus 2.
2 per bedroom plus 2.
Right, that extra 2 always doesn't make sense to me.
It's for
I
little
guess
kids.
they could sleep on the sofa,
They
the
sleep on
pull-out
the
sofa.
But I feel like it,
Some places have like bunk beds in bedrooms,
Yeah.
or they have like a family room or a basement that's got extra beds in it. That's kind of why it's there.
but I feel like one of the big complaints you get from neighbors is the parking. Right, and if we're like stacking an extra 2 per bedroom, not per bedroom, but total. Clarify how I'm saying that. It seems a little odd to me.
They may or may not have their own car.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the 5-year-olds have their own cars. I don't know. Anyway,
Any Any other
Madam Chair, I'll let you go
questions?
to
Any other
ADUs
questions
now.
on short-term rental before we switch gears?
I will catch up.
So,
There.
so ADUs. I know that these have been discussed at some of the neighborhood meetings, and you indicated that it tends to be that people are more in favor of allowing them than not in that restricted zone. And the number of inquiries about ADUs was higher in the area around the university than it was in other parts of the city. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this in the workshop we did a few months ago, and we had logged, well, Tanya did before she left, a certain number, and the highest percentage of them obviously was in that exclusionary zone and up at Hillcrest. So there is some interest in it, but whether that translates into an actual application or request or maybe I don't know. And it was hard to tell whether or not they were all owner occupied versus, hey, I'm going to put an ADU and maximize my student rental type of perception. But we won't know for certain until we actually get the application.
Okay.
And then when this was discussed at different neighborhood councils, there wasn't unanimous one way or the other. We hate them or we love them. It was, you just had a wide range of opinions on them.
But at those meetings, was the subject of detached brought up, or was it mostly just looking at the owner-occupied ADU?
Owner-occupied ADU just as a concept.
Internal, it wasn't, were people reacting to it versus that internal was, all that was permitted right now in the city? I just am trying to figure out, like, detached is a different topic than internal, I think, could be for some neighbors. Like,
But I also want to
now you're
clarify that
putting
even if you have
a
it
house behind.
attached, it still has to be an owner-occupied main unit.
Right.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
internal
what I'm
and
saying,
detached don't really, the rest don't really change anything. It's they always have more people in the separate
Attached
units.
or-
It's really the same discussion. It's more of an aesthetic issue,
That's what I'm saying, like, the detached is an aesthetic thing for somebody, like, I get to look out at my neighbor's beautiful green yard, and now all of a sudden there's going to be an ADU, there's going to be
You
a
have different
detached.
But you don't own that guy's yard, so you
I
can
know,
put up
I'm
a
just saying-
shop, you can put up a big giant tree or a hedge or whatever.
I know, but just in the conversations, it was it was just about ADUs in general, not specifically that we were
Correct.
thinking of allowing detached units. Okay. Other questions on ADUs?
I still think the 6,000 foot, I would like to look at drawings from Russ, hand drawn. In MS Paint.
He could probably do better than that.
He left. Oh, he's over the corner. I just feel like it feels a little redundant. And if we're really pushing for small,
Yeah, we could just,
I don't know.
we could take just some sample lot
What
sizes and draw.
if somebody has a bigger piece of property, can they put in more than one? Or is it
It's
just
always one.
one per property, okay? Except they had a basement and then a detached.
Your in-laws and your parents can't have their own rentals on opposite sides of your property.
Just making sure.
And doing them in multifamily is like, it's an interesting concept. So there was a discussion about that in the documents, just like that you could potentially build townhomes that have already,
You can't, building code doesn't allow you to do that.
yeah.
So the fact that it's zoned multifamily doesn't change how we view the structure itself. You could have single-family dwellings on a multifamily zone and want to do an ADU.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Any other questions on ADUs? Any questions on the business piece that we started with? I don't think we didn't ask any questions about that.
No.
Was that pretty straightforward with planning commission?
Yeah. I do not have more questions at this time.
I'm sure I'll have more in 2 weeks.
So
I guess, can I ask one more question? I've got a bunch of emails. Obviously, you probably have had different emails, same emails that I've seen. Has everything been forwarded to the council that you've had?
I think you've got
Okay.
equal agency, yeah.
Perfect. That answers that question.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate you. All right. Our next workshop is on ordinance 24-19. This is,
Let's get him out of here. It's his birthday cake.
Yeah. I'm going to cover two at the same time.
Get back for seconds.
Thank you, council.
So this is piggybacking on home occupations. That was the sort of land use side. There was some administrative sort of business licensing amendment that we wanted to propose as well. So this is kind of coming through in tangent with that. And that has to do with low impact home occupations. So currently there's a state code that exempts low impact home occupations from license fees. This is most common home offices is what we run into with this a lot. But it does allow for cities, this is the state ordinance, it allows for cities to charge an administrative fee for exempt licenses. So when this code was adopted at the state level back in 2017, we adopted a change that exempted fees for those low impact home occupations, but they were still required to acquire a license. Now what we've seen administratively is that the majority of our home occupation licenses are these, what we classify as no impact home occupations. We have almost 400 of them active right now. And in fact, they're the most common application type that we issue and process. However, at the same time, we're not collecting any.
So there's a lot of staff time.
There's a lot of staff time sinking into these. And also, they are low impact. These are home offices, so zoning's having to review these, but they're just review, check that box and move on to the next one. And so we're pushing all this paper around for no real benefit administratively in business licensing because these are such low impact operations. And so the proposed change is to, going back to that state ordinance, is to just exempt them from licensure. They do not have to, they're not required to get a license. They're still subject to zoning codes and other applicable codes, but they don't have to require a license. And then, once again, under what that state code allows, if you still want a license from us, you may acquire one, but there is an administrative fee that you'll pay. And a renewal fee, and that would be a $50 administrative fee in renewal. So that is the proposed ordinance change.
So if you have a low impact home business, there's not ramifications of tax revenue that's due to the city if you're selling stuff?
We run into this very occasionally, but most online sales are collected through the
right through Amazon,
through whichever they are. So so there's not.
Looking out for you, Rich.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah. And we did base this on other cities. We won't be like in new territory here. This was based on what a lot of other cities have adopted this code. So that's
pretty simple.
516. Then the resolution would be to add the home occupation administrator.
Did those cities notice a big decline in licenses, but then the fees were compensating for loss?
And I don't think anybody can imagine just the amount of licenses that we ended up exempting. And we'd rather start from exempt them from licensure, and then if they need it, we can provide that.
Makes sense. Any questions for Aaron?
License fees.
We should have had you earlier in the agenda, I'm sorry. That's Mike's fault, because he's the one who submitted it, not mine. So. Any other questions for Aaron on this? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have the next one. Oh, they're both there. Boom, boom. Okay, that covered both of those. Our last workshop item is Resolution 24-37. This is about a budget adjustment related to emergency management supplies. Is that it?
EMS grant, we get it each year for $13,000. I am requesting that we add one verbally so that we can action it next time.
Okay.
It is very small. It's $21,750,000.
Very small.
Very small. This was.
Wait, you're not joking?
I'm not, I'm sorry.
You're really adding 21 million.
This is actually a carry forward. I didn't understand what Paul was requesting, and he thought I understood, and I didn't. So we left the water tank out.
Okay.
So just asking that in total, when you add this one with what was just passed, which was 955,000 something. When you add those two together, that carries forward all the capital funds for the water tank primarily. That's 20 million of it, and then other minor projects that we're on.
Okay.
What is project 726? Because I've never seen that on the end of a,
I think we added.
Budget
we added
adjustment.
Project numbers to various things, I think
I
that's
don't know if I've ever noticed that. I went back and looked on the last couple and was like, I've never seen a project number on there before.
Yeah, we don't typically put them on the letters, but we track those internally and we assign to various projects, just so we know how much we spent on various things.
Any questions for Rich on the $21 million carry forward that just got put on here?
Is this a project 125 type thing?
All right, since there's none, we will close the workshop, move on to any other considerations.
So you're all coming next Tuesday? Everyone except for Mayor Danes?
For the stair climb,
Wednesday?
Tuesday.
It's not
8 o'clock, stair climb.
Tuesday. Wednesday.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's Tuesday.
Should I give that you a
There was something I was going to do under other considerations, but it's completely slipped my mind. It was the circle. Okay, thank you.
We got that covered.
We got it covered twice.
All right,
You guys are all coming.
where should we put this? Thank you so much. But I will also add, though, there is also the 9/11 event that's happening up in North Logan at the, whatever, the soccer complex.
Hanson Soccer.
Hanson Soccer Complex. So if people are also looking for other things that they can go, that's being sponsored by a bunch of different community organizations. There's music and events and everything happening.
Some museum items from the actual site.
Right. So it should be a pretty interesting and amazing display. So that's also going on that next weekend.
Couple things. Just a reminder, the Latino Festival on Center Street on the 14th of September, which is going to be longer than it has ever been. They're switching a few things, so I think those improvements, hopefully there will be improvements to the organizing committee. And also, as part of the Hispanic Heritage Month, I believe the NEMA Museum up on campus is having an exhibit starting this Saturday. Yeah.
For what?
Chicano art, like handkerchief art.
Yeah.
New to me.
They've had some great exhibits that I've been seeing. Awesome.
Anything else? All right. Well, then adjourn our Logan City Council meeting, and I will now convene the meeting for the Logan Redevelopment Agency. We have one action item on our calendar for this evening. This is a public hearing. It is on Resolution 24-35 RDA, which is a carry forward for $25,000 for the Plaza project. Rich, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No,
All right, any questions for Rich? This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to Resolution 24-35 RDA, please come to the podium, state your name, where you live, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
There aren't too many of us there. I'm just wondering what happens to the 25,000? Does it come back to us? Does it go back into RDA money?
So we're gonna spend it, that completes the project. The last 25,000 on the project, it was for the,
The screening around the road, there were a few things that they didn't get finished before we opened the plaza, and so the contract was not completely, so this money was already appropriated. We're just basically getting
So
approval to pay it out.
That's where it goes.
Yeah, so it's just
Okay, I
carrying
just
it over.
wondered because, it's hard to hide 21 million, but it might be easier to hide 25,000.
well,
Not- Yeah,
we put it right there in
black and white.
I can't hide 25,000, I can't hide 25.
All right, anyone else care to speak to this? All right, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the RDA for action.
No one wants to finish up the
So
Plaza project?
I'll move that we approve Resolution 24-35 RDA.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2435 RDA, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 2435 RDA passes, and there's no other business, so we are adjourned.
So you ended other council business before I had one more thing.